And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We're covering Army football. Saturday at 1:30, the Black Knights will take on Louisiana-Monroe, their second game of the year for Army. They're coming off a win last week, 42-0 over Middle Tennessee State. And this will be the first game of the year for Louisiana-Monroe. Joining us are Richard Miller from our Sons of the American Legion group based in Florida. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Ken. How are you?
Very good. And with us calling in from Huntsville, Alabama, is our friend and West Point graduate class of '87, Colonel Sam Houston. Sam, how are you tonight?
I'm great, Ken. Thanks for the invite. With a little more advanced notice, I might have taken the razor blade to my face, but you're going to get the salt and pepper look tonight.
That's fine. That's fine. Glad to have you with us. And we'll be up at West Point tomorrow. They made a comment about spectators limited on something, but I don't believe there are going to be spectators at the game. First, Sam, what was your impression of last week's game? Certainly a dominant 42-0 win.
It was clearly beyond what I expected. As you recall from our conversation before the game, I made a prediction right at the end, and my prediction was off. I really expected it to be a closer game. I expected it to be one that Army won in the fourth quarter, and the bottom line was Army put in what I consider to be their most dominant from start to finish performance I've seen since the 2018 season. As a matter of fact, I was telling my dad the other night on the phone that I thought it was the most dominating Army victory since the Armed Forces Bowl in 2018. So kudos to the team. Very impressive. I don't want to get too overly excited because after we saw what happened to Navy on Monday night, there is also the X factor, and the X factor is how much was MTSU actually prepared for the game?
Well, that's going to be the big question. Certainly early in the season is what teams are prepared like they normally would be, and what schools are behind in their preparation for reasons of COVID and other factors. First, we got to go give you a chance to talk about Navy's game on Monday night. Losing 55-3. No one saw that coming, that Navy would not be competitive. What was your impression?
I'm sorry, was that to me?
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Okay. Just like you, I would say just like the entire football world, probably just like the entire military academy brotherhood here, I seriously did not see that one coming. It's so very unexpected to see a Ken Niumatalolo team hit the field to be utterly unprepared for a game. And I'm not taking anything away from BYU. I think they do have a really good team this year, and they came out and they played lights out in that game. They hit, they hustled, they outplayed. But on the flip side of that coin was the obvious and glaring fact that Navy looked like it was the first time they had suited up all season, and it was. And they simply got ran off the field. And I understand Ken's perspective about his players' safety was his concern with COVID-19. But I've got to say that err on the side of caution probably put his kids more in jeopardy of getting injured. He's very fortunate that none of his players got seriously injured in that game.
Absolutely. And Richard Miller, tell us, what was your thought about the first week of the season? What did you see happening with the Army game and the Navy games?
Well, what I thought in the Army games early on, I thought Army was really dominant with those 3 touchdowns early and building up the early a lead of 21-0 at the first half. I thought an early lead could really put this game out of the way. Especially, I like the play of Christian Anderson adding a 24-yard run up the middle in the third quarter. Especially the play of Anthony Atkins. 22-yard completed 99-yard drive for the Black Knights' final score. I thought they did a really good job of controlling the football and controlling the clock.
Well, certainly, and that's a good update, Richard. On offense, they were very impressive, Sam, in terms of starting with the quarterback playing his second game. He started the Navy game last year, Chris Anderson, and then the four fullbacks led Kobe Buchanan and that whole group. Tell us what you see in the offense, Sam, that impressed you.
Probably the most exciting surprise for me personally coming out of the MTSU game was the play of the plebe Robinson. That young man is electric. I don't recall hearing much about him in the preseason. It may just be that I wasn't really paying attention, which can be the case. But once that young man had the ball in his hands, the manner with which he could make cuts at full speed and accelerate reminded me of Malcolm Perry. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself on that perspective, because Malcolm Perry, in my opinion, was a 1 in every 10 years player for a service academy. But if he can continue his professional development on the field of friendly strife and stay the course for all 4 years at the academy, that young man has the potential to be one of the most exciting players Army has fielded in a long time. That being said, where fullbacks are concerned, that this is a very exciting topic. And the reason I say that is because last year, obviously the B-back was not getting the push from the line of scrimmage from the offensive line. I did not feel the B-back was very loaded after losing some of the players to graduation that they had lost. But it's very clear to the Long Gray Line, Army faithful worldwide, that it does appear that the B-back is fully reloaded at Army for this season. And not only is it reloaded, it's reloaded with a lot of youth. Atkins and Buchanan are absolutely giants among men on the field. And I also believe that Cade Ballard runs very hard when he has the opportunity to run, although he is a little behind in the rotation. But to have the leadership that they have from the seniors on the team, and to be able to develop them and rotate them through is very important this year as Army proceeds through the season, because it ensures that they can always have a very large, fresh body at the B-back ready to roll. That keeps the defense on their heels. MTSU really suffered from that stable of B-backs.
Yeah, it's interesting that Tyrell Robinson wasn't even listed for the game on the 2 deep chart, and he went in and got 94 yards rushing, and it was interesting that with the Corps of Cadets in the stands, at one point after he got a long run, there was a chant from the Corps, "That's our freshman," and they were, I guess that's unusual. Tell us a little bit about, Sam, about if you're a freshman and you're on a football team or another team at the academy. How does it work as far as it's not the normal treatment of a plebe, maybe in the barracks? How are the freshmen treated when they're on a team?
Well, I can use my own perspective on that. Corps squad athletes, obviously the plebes are still plebes. They when they're in their academic area with their cadet companies, when they're going through their day-to-day activities, they still have to adhere to the 4th class system. But when they're with their teammates, they're recognized among the teammates. They sit at the Corps squad tables. They get to eat. They don't have to spout off knowledge and sit at attention and do the fist check on the chair and all the other stuff with their teammates. When you're with your team, and you're not really judged by what class year you are. It's how much of an impact you are being to the team as a whole, what a team player that you are, and what kind of a contribution that you are making. But it's really important to be like that, because if it were the other way around, it would be very difficult for the plebes on the team to be able to stay at playing weight, and it would add additional stresses that probably would limit their ability to perform on the field.
Well, the other freshman who did well and impressed was Isaiah Alston, number 86, the wide receiver, made a catch early in the game right over the middle. And we talked to him a little bit this week. He likes playing basketball. And that's one of the things I've learned from covering basketball is that the good players get the ball. You know, they have good hands, big hands, and if there's a rebound, they get it. And I think he's the same kind of player that if the ball is thrown near him, and he's got a good quarterback who could throw the ball, Christian Anderson, he's going to get it.
I agree, totally.
So, and Richard, do you have a thought about the Army offense? You were watching it pretty closely.
Yeah, I thought the Army offense was really flying in the early going. I think if you can keep up a game like that with the time and possessions, most of the time you're going to win. Not all the time, but I think at least controlling most of the possessions and the time in the game, that will pay big time for Army.
Okay.
Yeah, Ken.
That's a good point. Sam, tell us a little bit about one thing I want to ask you about is the offensive line. The center, Connor Bishop, had a big game in his first game as a sophomore, and he went and I guess Coach Munkin's got a new stat that they're tracking called knockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that Connor Bishop had 20 knockdowns. Now, he also said a couple of the other players had a similar count. But that's a good start. The center position is so important in an option offense, and to have a young center and a new quarterback working together, that's quite a challenge, but they handled it pretty well.
Absolutely. The line play as a whole was stellar last week. It was something that was hit or miss all season last year. And the anchor of a option offensive line is the center. If the center is unable to get a push off the line of scrimmage, then practically every play on the triple option is already busted because there is no push downfield from the rest of the line of scrimmage, and the defense is not sold on the dive. The fact that Connor Bishop is able to come in and perform at the level that he did provides such a tremendous advantage to the offensive line as a whole that gives the dive option, and remember, it's an option offense, so just the ability to even fake a handoff at the dive freezes the defense because the defense now fears the offensive center who is able to get a push on the center of the defensive line of scrimmage. So hats off. And I love knockdown. I think that's a great stat. That's a man stat right there. And I'm so glad to hear that Jeff Monken's tracking it, because that throws the standard down on everybody. You know, you want to meet the knockdown standard.
And everybody was very impressed with the left tackle, number 68, Lucas McCleary, 6'5", 290, Keller, Texas. Big game, Mike Johnson. They also had very consistent at left guard. Braden Reeder at right guard, 6'6", 300, and J.B. Hunter, senior, 290. That's going to be one of the strengths of this team. And if these guys can stay healthy, those four seniors on the offensive line, that's quite a strength of this team.
Very much so, and I'm glad to see that these seniors are getting another crack at redeeming last season. As Jeff Monken said at the end of the MTSU game when he was being interviewed, he talked about how the team came into the season with a real chip on their shoulder, and that the salty taste in your mouth last December is a taste they don't want to have come December of this year. And so you could see how much that was driving the senior leadership on the team to make certain that there was never a play where somebody let their guard down or rested for a moment. So I'm very impressed, and I really do hope that energy level increases and throughout the season.
Well, the Army defense was making plays, generating interceptions, fumbles, 4 turnovers on the game. And they got a interception early that led to the first touchdown. And Cedric Cunningham really did well with 5 tackles, solos, 2 assists, had 1 sack and a tackle for a loss. And John Radican had an interception for a touchdown and 6 tackles. Eric Smith, the inside linebacker, had 4 tackles. And one of the players everybody was glad to see have a big game was Amadeo West. He had 2 tackles, and one of them was for a loss. The Army defense looked strong. My impression was that the defensive backs made a lot of tackles, and rather than linebackers, which we've seen in the past. What did you notice, Matt? Does that reflect a little bit of the difference in the new philosophy on defense?
It was very clear that tackle drills had been very much emphasized in their contact drills. Tackling was incredible throughout the game. It wasn't just the tackling itself, it was the first contact. These were some very hard hits that were being laid on the field, and it didn't matter the size of the player on the defense. The hit that they were putting on the MTSU people were giving them pause for the next play to know that the Army has come to lay the wood. And this was also apparent on the kick returns. So special teams was another example of where the amount of intensity and the effectiveness of the tackling and coverage was impeccable. But the defense as a whole, certainly hats off to Nate Woody, the new defensive coordinator. A huge question mark, as you recall, we talked about before the game last week, was to see how the defense was going to respond to Nate Woody's new system. Having not had a spring practice, not having the extra reps, how much the team was going to be able to effectively implement Nate Woody's attacking style of a plan. Clearly, the defensive backs have a far greater role in run defense and covering running lanes than they had in the defense last year, which is accounting for a number of defensive backs that are making tackles normally associated with linebackers close to the line of scrimmage. And the aggressiveness of the defensive line really had MTSU's entire offense on their heels from start to finish. So I look forward to seeing the defense with another week under Nate Woody's belt and see how well they perform tomorrow, because improving from where they were this past Saturday, the sky's the limit. And notwithstanding that there's 2 starting cornerbacks weren't even in the game this past week.
That's right. Jabari Bordeaux was not able to play, and very experienced and played 3 full years for Army. So I think Saturday, obviously a very impressive win for Army coming last week. They're playing a team, Louisiana-Monroe, that's been challenged in their preparation. They had a COVID epidemic on the team in about the 20th of August, which resulted in some lost practice time. And then they had the hurricane go right over their head in north central Louisiana. And then they had their defensive coordinator resign. So they had to elevate one of the, I think it's the linebacker coach. Do you have any experience with Louisiana-Monroe? They've had a history of being a very good offensive team.
I only know what I've researched. They had a very good offense last year. They were 1 field goal away from being bowl eligible last year. And by the same token, and the previous season is always a very poor measure of how a team is going to do this season. But it's all we have to look to right now because they haven't played any games yet. But looking back to last season, their defense was very suspect last year. They were extremely poor, if not one of the worst teams in FBS against the run. None of that bodes well against a triple option power like Army. But we'll see what type of intensity they're able to bring to the table tomorrow. And after having a week of watching other teams play in college football that were clearly not prepared for their opening game, I personally like to think that at the ULM camp that put a fire under the rear ends of a lot of their players to make sure that this week they weren't the same team that shows up not ready to play. So I fully expect that despite all of their adversity that they have faced, they are going to come and put forward their best effort. And it is going to be extremely motivated by a desire to not show up and get embarrassed. And if they can keep themselves competitive through the first 3 quarters of the game, they certainly have the firepower on offense to give Army some fits come the 4th quarter.
Absolutely. Last year, they took Florida State into overtime and lost 45-44. Second game of the year, they beat Grambling. They lost to South Alabama. They beat South Alabama. They lost at Iowa State badly, 72-20. And they lost. They had a difficult time with Appalachian State, losing 52-7. They beat Georgia State, who beat Army last year, 45-31. That was a nice win for them. And then they beat Coastal Carolina 45-42. And they also lost to Georgia Southern, another team that's going to play Army, 51-29 last year. They have they graduated a quarterback named Caleb Evans. That was a big part of their offense. But returning is a running back, a tailback, Josh Johnson, number 8, who I guess is a player to watch. And he ran for 1,298 yards and 108 yards a game. So they have a running back. Their quarterback, Colby Suits, played in 4 games last year. He played most of that in the Old Miss game for them. And he got 24 plays, 13 rushes, threw for 69 yards. And so it's going to be a new quarterback for them. Looking at their offensive line, they are big. The left guard, 6'5", 305, Dakota Torbert, 65. Their left tackle, Blade Load, 6'7", 315. Their center, Zach Crow, is a sophomore, 306. And the right guard is TJ Flalo, 6'4", 302. And the right tackle is 6'7", 318. A senior, Samuel Williams. They got some size on all their offensive linemen are over 300 pounds. That's a big line, Sam.
It is. I don't think that it's out of the norm for practically any FBS opponent outside the other service academies that Army faces, though. It's very common for Army to face teams that have a much larger offensive line than what their defensive line is able to bring to the table. The question is really how prepared defensively, what type of scheme Army has to counterbalance the size of the offense. And at the same time, on the other side of the line of scrimmage is how well the ULM offensive line is ready to play as a unit. And that's really going to be telling. So big guys, when they play as a team, they can be extremely effective. Take a look at the BYU Navy game. That offensive line totally crushed Navy, and they played as a unit the entire time. But if you have an offensive line of 5 big guys and they're not playing as a unit, all they are is people for very aggressive defensive players to run around as they make tackles.
That's true. Richard, what are your thoughts about Army's game this week in Louisiana-Monroe?
Army's game against Louisiana-Monroe, I think they've got to watch those players you've mentioned. You and Sam have talked about. The guys that are over like 300 pounds. You gotta watch out for them because they'll be coming after them. I think blitzing at least maybe once or twice in the first half. You gotta watch out for the big defenders because I think they might be able to sack the quarterback a couple of times in the game.
Okay. Sam, do you think that Louisiana-Monroe is going to focus a little bit of attention on Sandon McCoy, having that he 3 times in a row, 3 drives in a row, he scores on 1 to 4 yard dive play, and going right between the center and the tackle. you think they're going to be thinking about how they can possibly stop Santa McCoy?
Absolutely. The number one objective of practically every team that comes up against Army or Navy or Air Force is to stop the dive, stop the B-back. You can stop the B-back and you force the offense to go to the outside and depend on their speed around in. If they're getting no push between the tackles, then they're not running north-south. And there's a lot of deception in triple option football indeed. But that deception is primarily designed to keep the backs running north and south between the tackles. And if you can stop the push of the B-back, you've eliminated 1/3 of the attack. And you have made a statement that you cannot pave your way between tackles. You're going to have to beat us to the outside. And when Army gets in a situation where they have to beat teams to the outside, in the past, they've been in trouble. And that's because a lot of times the defensive backs at the FBS level are very fast, they react very quickly, and they tackle very well. So ULM is most certainly going to be focusing on the B-back, and they're going to be looking to take the dive out of the Army's playbook early and then keep it out of the playbook the rest of the game.
Absolutely. And what do you think Coach Monken is saying to the team this week about not resting on their laurels of a good opening day, not thinking about that opponent coming in a week from now, but just focusing on the game at hand on Saturday against Louisiana-Monroe?
The first thing that I would imagine that he said in the locker room as they started practice this week is, first he complimented them on a job well done in the Middle Tennessee game, and then he said, here's the fact, your record is now 0-0. ULM's record is 0-0. At the end of the day, your objective is to be 1-0. Because every week your record is 0-0 and you want to walk away 1-0. So there's only one game to think about, and that's this weekend's game. Nothing that you did, no play that you made, no tackle that you made, no kick that you made, no pass that you completed can be pulled as credit from the MTSU game and applied to the ULM game. You've got to do everything in your power, execute every play, and play every snap to the 100% of your ability as a team to win this game. On top of that, he's also going to tell people, don't flinch. No matter what happens in the game, if there's a setback, if there's a turnover, don't flinch. And the last thing he's saying is, no matter what, do your job.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting game tomorrow to see if Army can build on last week's success. And we're looking forward to being there. Richard Miller, do you have a final thought about this game tomorrow, Middle Tennessee State and, Louisiana-Monroe, and coming into play Army at Michie Stadium?
Watch for the defenders. Make sure we stay out of penalties. Don't give up any extra yards.
That's right. Army had a few more penalties than they would have liked last week. And so that would be something they're not going to be able to, Coach Monken always prides himself on the team not making mistakes. So Richard, good point. We will be on the air from Michie Stadium at about 12:15 tomorrow. We'll cover the warm-ups of the teams and stay on through the National Anthem. And last week they had a parachute demonstration. And then the team running on the field. The game will be broadcast by the CBS Sports Network, and that will start at approximately 1:30 with our friend Ben Holden calling the game, and see if Army can get to 2-0 on the season. Sam, a final thought?
I agree with Richard. Keep the penalties down. Hold on to the ball. I think that in the end, Army's going to win. I think Army's just the better team this time, and that's not me just being a partisan, avid Army fan, even though I am. My prediction for the game is I would love to predict another shutout, but I don't want to be so bold. So my prediction for the game is going to be Army 42, ULM 21.
42-21. Okay. I would come up with something fairly similar. I don't know if they'll score if Louisiana-Monroe is going to score 3 touchdowns, but we'll see what happens. I think Army's going to. I mean, they're going to try to do more of these in a 19-play drive to end the game last week. They can really eat up the clock with those ball-controlled drives. Richard, what do you think the score of the game is going to be tomorrow?
Score of the game tomorrow, Army 31, 31-17 Army.
31. Okay, you think it's going to be a little bit closer? And
yes, I think.
And you're not confident about the Army offense only getting to 31, but I guess that's not a bad out. But I want to thank you both for joining us. Colonel Sam Houston from the class of 1987 and the Sprint football team, thank you for joining us today. And our producer-director, Richard Miller from our Sons of the American Legion radio team calling in from Florida. Thank you, Richard. Good job today.
Thank you, Ken.
And so we'll see you here on the Facebook page, West Point Football Report, about 12:15 tomorrow. We'll go live from the press box and show the warm-ups for both teams and then the pregame activity. And we just feel like it's a great way to cover the event, as it doesn't look like there's going to be spectators tomorrow, just the Corps cadets. But it's a pretty big advantage for Army having their 4,000 cadets there in the stands. So thank you both. This is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Ken. Beat ULM, beat Navy.
Mhm.
Okay.